everyone, and welcome to the React Native Show podcast, which is brought to you by Callstack, a total software engineering consultancy. Today, we're discussing the state of React Native with our guests who created a State of React Native survey. Second time, our guests are Bartłomiej Bukowski and Kacper Kapuściak. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey there, I'm Bartek, and I'm the creator and the author of the idea behind the state of the React Native survey. On a daily basis, I'm a software engineer at Software Mention, and I'm doing for the 2 years already, the client work, user-facing apps. Before that, I was working for the Expo for almost 4 years, creating these amazing tools I hope we'll be talking about throughout this session.
Hey, and hi, I'm Kacper Kapuściak. I'm a React Native open source developer at Software Mention. I help maintaining our libraries, React Native Reanimated, React Native Gesture Handler, and React Native Screens. I used to maintain also React Navigation for a while. I just jump in where I'm needed in the open source related stuff at Software Mention.
And thank you for your service, Kacper, and thank you for creating the State of React Native survey, Bartek. Thanks, guys, for coming in. So we are recording this on Wednesday, and the survey is going to be live in a few hours. I hope we'll be live with this episode few hours after that. Let's see how that goes. I want to briefly explain what I have in mind for the structure of this episode. So we have a survey that has, I don't know, like million, maybe 999, 100,000 questions. So let's not talk about all of the questions and all of the answers. And I think that each answer has like 5 different ways of interpreting it. So let's focus on some things that you feel are interesting, that you feel are maybe shocking sometimes. So our structure would be, first, I want to have your opinion about like the bigger questions in React Native. What's the community is going for? What are the biggest changes this year? What is the state of React Native as a whole, let's say. Then let's figure out some smaller topics that we will be discussing in detail. Then I want to talk about the React survey as a product, let's say, as an initiative that Bartek took and created. And then maybe figure out some future of React Native. How is that going to work for you? Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah,
sure.
Definitely. Let's go for
Okay.
that.
So let's jump with the biggest question of them all. So what is the biggest trend, the observation maybe that you have about the community and our React Native technology that you see in the data from this year?
Do you want to start? I can maybe start.
Sure. Go
So
on.
besides the obvious parts, I've seen that for the whole data, most of the people just use the default part. So if the default part for a problem is good enough, people will use it. So for data fetching, people use fetch. For styling, most of the people use just style sheet. If the tool is good enough, the default tool is good enough, people will keep using the default. And they will look for alternatives when the default part is not good enough for them. That's what I've seen from the data.
Yeah. My observation is that the point of interest is shifting year over year. Last year, the opinions of the community were mostly targeting how React Native, whether it's stable or not, and what are the problems with the React Native technology being reliable or not. While this year, we observed the shift towards some specific aspects like the navigation boom around Expo router, or like the blooming styling section where we observe like a numerous new options. When we also look at the opinions this year, we don't see the ones that were dominating last year. I mean, year over year, this technology evolves. Maintainers and the community takes care of another like parts of it, improves them, and that allows people to focus on something different, on different
So
topic.
in a
And
way, the last year survey and the opinions there and community complaints actually influenced the React Native community. And I know you have an example of that, so I'm gonna let you say it. But I just want to congratulate you on such a good job last year, so that this year we don't get the same complaints. We get new ones, but the old ones are moving the community to the better place.
yeah, that is so true. To be honest, I guess we were never expecting such a like success. Let's call it that way. I were never expecting this survey to be used as a source of material or like the source of insight into the community by these biggest players in our like React Native world. Let's say uh, both Meta and Expo are at the very moment like trying to improve the, let's say, second most highlighted problem last year, which is debugging.
Mhm.
And both these companies are preparing some new stuff for us to improve this part of the like programming in React Native to make it better. So I were never expecting that. And I remember the first time I saw like the screenshot of the survey on the App.js conference that Software Mission is organizing yearly in Krakow. I was amazed, and yeah, it was so rewarding for me.
And since then, that screenshot or that concept of bringing up the complaint from the React Native survey uh, was popping out in other talks on other conferences as well. So we're gonna link some of those talks down in the episode description, because it's like, I feel this is really, it must be really rewarding for you uh, for your first year that already had that kind of influence.
Yeah, this impact was so rewarding, and thanks to this survey we met like awesome people. I were never thinking about meeting people from Meta, Microsoft, and other community members, or especially I were never expected myself to be joining such podcast episodes. It's awesome. To
Oh,
be
thank
honest, it's
you.
awesome.
We're really glad to have you here, and we're really glad that we can record this around the time that survey is going out, so that people can read the survey and at the same time can just know your opinion about it, like opinions from creators. Okay, let's get into it. So I have the survey opened on my 4K monitor. It's huge, but the survey is huge, and it's quite complicated. So last year we also did like walkthrough through the survey, but this year around, I want, while I have you here, I want you to navigate me through the survey so that we can maybe be more audible for our listening audience of what the survey consists of, how to read the survey, what are the important buttons and quirks there that they might want to hear about. So I'm gonna share my screen, and let's start with okay, maybe last one last thing that I want to say. We obviously prepped for this episode. We have a list
Yes, we
of
did.
things that we want to say, because like I said, the survey is like million questions and 2 million answers. So we have like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 things that we want to touch on. So I'm gonna open up the survey now. Let me share my screen. I'm gonna share the Chrome tab here.
Here it
there.
is.
Yep.
So again, like big shout out to Software Mention for putting this together a second time in a row. I love it. The if I wanted to describe it, it looks a little bit like reanimated dogs.
For a reason.
Kacper?
For a reason, yeah. I had my hands on it, and
Yeah.
yeah, this is why.
And
Yeah.
we figured in our prepping for this episode, we figured that maybe graphics and animations would be a good starting point to actually explain what's going on in the survey itself. And right at the start, on the
Mhm.
first graph that you can see here, React Native Skia is at the top of the ranking for graphics and animations. What's going on here?
Bartek?
Yeah. That was really striking for us because, at Software Mention, we are doing React Native Reanimated, and we've been dethroned by this graph at the very first glance. And yeah, I will start from the fact that the survey structure and the layout should be familiar to anyone who read the results last year, because we are reusing the software here. And shout out to the creators of the original platform, the Graphics team, because they created state of JS, state of CSS. They are this year doing state of React, and we are gladly reuse their software. They allowed us to do so.
We
Don't
asked
be worried
politely.
about this. But overall, we improved a little bit this survey. And speaking of this graph, graphics and animations, and we've got this ranking. The first thing you see here, there are these two tabs at the top: rankings and percentages. The rankings is the default one, and this it looks nice. It's very colorful, but the data is presented not in a proper way to some extent, because you got an item after an item with the even spaces between them. And the first default option that is selected here is retention metric. All these metrics that we've got here, retention, interest, usage, and awareness, are described below, how you should interpret them and what they actually mean. And from my point of view, it's best to start from the usage option, usage metric. And here you see that React Native Reanimated, boom, it's at the top
Yes, is
again.
at the top, like we would expect.
Yeah, and where is this React Native Skia? Oh, I see it as on the fourth place, right?
Mhm.
What is a little bit misleading here is that these are aligned evenly, so you don't see the actual gap between the places, the individual places. And here you can switch to percentages tab, and yet again select the usage metric at the bottom. And now you see the differences. I think that that's the best way to interpret this data as is, and what are the actual differences. You can also select the interest, the awareness, but in my opinion, both usage and retention are the most interesting ones, because they
Mhm.
actually describe the popularity and in actual word of the specific technology.
So in
Yeah,
simple terms, the retention is the people have used it and liked using it and kept using it again. So last year they've used Skia and they've used it again this year, and they like it and they keep using it. But the usage is how the people are literally having in their app. That's in the simple terms.
Mhm.
So I would compare it to hype versus reality. That would be the metric B. So the usage
Okay.
would be more the reality, how much people are using the following technology.
Okay, so in your words, the reality, and not in your words, but uh, what I can read from
We are
this
having
survey
hard
about
data here,
graphics,
Yeah.
graphics and animations is that the reality is that React Native Reanimated is the king of animations. The second
Oh,
place
well, we
is the
believe so.
animated API. And this ties nicely to what you said in the
Yeah.
beginning, where we discussed if the default is good enough, people would
Yeah.
use default. And
Yep.
animated API default is good enough for many people.
Yes,
I would
exactly.
say. And then the next logical step is to use reanimated.
Exactly.
React Native Skia is on distant fourth place with 26% of usage.
But it's very new technology and it's rising rapidly. And it's like filling the gaps that reanimated can't do. It's doing stuff on the Skia canvas that's the reanimated with its native nature cannot achieve. So it's not like it's competing reanimated and Skia. It's used sometimes together or even always used together. There's an integration between these two.
Yeah,
So
and also like I can imagine that in the next years, Skia might be included in graphics and animations, but maybe included in other parts of the survey as well, because it's not only used for graphics and animation. Like you
Yeah.
said, it uses Canvas under the hood, and it allows us to use React Native on other platforms where we cannot
Yeah.
use just regular React Native. So
Yeah.
maybe the platform would be React Native Skia someday.
We'll see how it goes. And I will take this moment to encourage you all listening to this podcast. Every year, before the survey questions are like published, we ask community to join forces with us, and shape the new set of questions to prepare the next version better than the previous one.
Yeah. I was involved in the discussion. I remember you pinged me on Discord in December and asked me for my feedback. When I got to it 3 days later, it was already a huge discussion on GitHub where people were actually contributing quite a lot to the structure, to the questions, to particular libraries. Should they be in the survey or not? And that was really great. That this is a community effort led by you, of course.
Yeah, and
Uh,
speaking of new libraries, we
okay,
can
that's a nice segue. Let's do that.
yeah, we can jump over to styling section. I believe that's the section that grew the most this year.
Yeah.
In terms of the amount of options here. And I understand people being very sad about the fact that they need to like answer each of this question regarding each of the technology here. But thanks to that, we've got this nice graph here in
So
front of us.
maybe let me explain what I did. So I clicked the the menu button of styling, and now we are in the page for styling ranking. Do you want me to select any maybe usage card or retention card or interest card?
Pick your choice.
Maybe
Okay, so
usage.
I'm gonna go with usage, and then you can see two two columns here. We have columns for last year, 2022, with 1, 2, 3, 4, with 7 libraries, and then the column for this year for 2023 is like twice as much, so probably
Precise.
14 libraries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. Or precisely. Yeah, this section doubled for sure. And this just shows us how many different options we have for styling at the moment. I think that, or I observe that it's very hot topic at the moment, or throughout the last year in the community, and new ideas are like emerging, and new ideas are pushed forward, getting a little bit more of attention. But what we can see by this usage metric is the fact that we've got this like Łukasz, can you select the usage again?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. What we can see that the defaults are still there.
Yeah.
Style sheet API, the king is there. Long live the king. And then we go with the inline styling. There is not much different between those two. Styled components are with us for as long as I've been doing React, so like a lot of years. And then we've got a massive drop in terms of actual usage, because we are dropping from 60% and 80% to 20%, or around 20%, and less and less and less. But what we can see that both Native Wind and Tamagui that we were also tracking last year are gaining in this field. I've had a chance to talk with the authors of these libraries, and yeah, I'm keeping my fingers crossed for them.
So, like you said, what I can see on this is that the style sheet API is the king because it's the default and it's good enough. But the style sheet API actually dropped few percent, and inline styling actually increased in a few percent. And I'm remembering some like Twitter discussions about this when people are actually going towards inline styling more recently than actually using the style sheet itself. For the other libraries, I can see a lot of web influence, of universal app influence. Like people are coming from the web or they want to have their as much code shared as possible, and they want to use like Tailwind. They want to use some other like React Native Unistyles or those like technologies that would allow them to combine their code bases, I think.
My take is sometimes it's not about the code base, but sometimes about the knowledge. So people have already learned something and they want to reuse that knowledge to build something on a different platform. From the developer background, or about you, I think, from the developer background, we know that many React Native developers come from the React world or from the front-end world. So if they learn something on the web, for example, Tailwind is very popular on the web right now, they want to use
Yeah.
the same knowledge they already have to build native apps. So if they know already, style sheet is like CSS. So they know CSS, they will use CSS. They know Tailwind, they will use native wind because it's the same syntax. They don't have to
Yeah.
learn new things to build stuff.
So maybe let's go into the developer background. What do you think?
Sure.
Please do.
I
So-
had my notes about this, and my notes about developer backgrounds is that open source contributions
Yeah, huge spike.
and
1/3
yes,
of the
like,
people. Yeah.
and my thinking about this is, do you think this is going to be hard question? Do you think your audience, your promotion for the survey might influence, like definitely does influence who is taking the survey? And for me, for to see like third of people that are taking the survey also contribute to React Native libraries, this is huge. This number, like every third person in the audience of React Native survey, state of React Native, is contributing to open source. What do you think about that?
Do you want to take it, or should I?
Kacper, go on, because you are like the open source.
Yeah, I'm doing open
contributor
source.
at
That's
the
true.
moment.
So my take is that yes, this survey is definitely biased somehow, because 2,000 people. That's not that many people for a survey. Some of the surveys that State of JS have, I don't know, 40,000 of answers. And the way we market the survey, we do it on Twitter, we do it on Discord or Slack. We reach to people that know us, that know software mention, but also reach to other companies that do open source, reach to Callstack, InfeedRed, or other partners in the React Native ecosystem. So obviously that's a bit biased towards more of experts, I would say, the people that are really interested in the React Native world. If someone just has a tiny app, probably would have never heard about State of React Native. And we would like to change that in the future to market better, to reach more people. So the 1/3, yeah, that's not possible, right? It doesn't seem right.
Yeah, it's that.
I wish that is the truth for
Yeah.
the whole React Native community.
We sure hope that's true, but we know that's not true. We are
Like
maintaining.
I'm really grateful to be in the community that actually improves the ecosystem. But let me tell you, like even at Callstack, from our developers, I'm not sure if at Callstack we have 1/3 of our developers that contributed to open source last year. So even if our whole company would did do the survey, probably the result would be the same. around this, maybe 1/3.
Yeah, something like that is with software mention as well. Yeah.
And then there is another point. So contributing to open source is not hard, and we encourage everyone to do that. And like really, there are some libraries there that you can easily put a PR up and have your feature merged. Contribution to React Native Core is another animal. It's more difficult, and even though it is 8% of respondents here are contributing to React Native Core. So I'm just gonna put it out there that we have some great people that are taking the survey and are contributing to React Native Core.
But I would say that it's not also about the always about the PRs. You can contribute in many other ways. You can triage issues. You can submit reproductions. So it's not always about the code, but you can help in other ways to contribute to open source libraries and to React Native as well. They can help people from Metar, to do this.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks. So from the developer background, where should we switch to?
I
Maybe
would say
to
UI component libraries, maybe this time.
yeah, that ties nicely because you are doing some no, sorry, the reanimated is not component library, but
No, but it
at
powers
the
some of them. It powers some of the component libraries. It could.
at Callstack we do React Native paper, and I want to start from that. The usage React Native paper is still on the top with usage, but we are chased by React Native elements and native base.
Yeah, so because I think that's my point. I think because you do React Native paper for so many years and you've been here for a long time and put so much, time and efforts for this, it began the default for React Native as the default component library. Maybe, I don't know. But it used to be for a long time that you've developed it, and it's been stable. So people think it's the first choice. So it's
Well, it's
probably
also I
yeah.
think it's also about the Material UI, right, from
Yeah,
Google.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So on Google platform, Material UI is everywhere. There are few different like web libraries that
Mm-hmm.
are helping React developers to employ this design language in their web apps. And React Native Paper is obvious choice for people
Mm-hmm.
that want to have material design, Material UI in their native apps. And also, I know Łukasz, who is maintaining this library, they had like revamp of the library last year when they
Mm-hmm.
employed Material UI 3 in there. So yeah, this is very well maintained, I would say, and this is a default for people that want
Material UI.
Material UI and that want some like easy to use components library.
There's a problem one with UI component libraries. I would call it bootstrapification of the web or the mobile world, because on the influx of the most popular libraries for UI components, uh, the whole web world for a short period of time looked the same. Everybody used Bootstrap, and then when Material UI came, the MUI library on the web, everyone has using the Material UI. So people sometimes get fed up with the library, so they look at every single web page or mobile app looked the same, so they look for alternatives. So it's
Yeah.
here it's not always about the default but about the looks as well. So if your component library looked the best, that's a reason maybe to choose a different one. Yep.
It's also like I really like how you said it, that people who want component library and want Material UI, the default is React Native Paper.
Yeah.
And combining that with the audience of the survey that are like, let's say, expert developers from those bigger companies that you have in your like on your Twitter or something. How about people who work on their smaller project in smaller companies that don't use the component library at all.
They have to build their own, but that's a lot of work to build their own.
Yeah.
So probably if I were them, I would choose the one that I'm most familiar with by the terms of syntax. So if you know Radix, maybe Tamagui part of the UI component library is maybe the best for you. But if you have a small app and don't use a UI component library, you're wasting a lot of times to create the same components over and over. That's where developed by other people already for you to use.
Yeah. Any notable shoutouts here in the retention or ranking on or interest that you want to point out?
If I may bring your attention to the chart just below the ranking, if you can scroll down a little bit,
Okay.
you will see the sentiment split chart. It's another source of truth, or maybe kind of representation of how specific library is opinionated by the people, whether they like it or not. And here, yet again, React Native paper is holding strong ground because the most people would use it again. Here it's nicely illustrated. What is striking, Tamagui that does not have this much usage. What we remember from the first chart here is it's gained a lot of attention, a lot of awareness, and this negative sentiment is not this big. I'm a little bit surprised by the native base getting this much negative sentiment split. By negative the sentiment split, I mean what this chart is presenting, which means would not use again or not interested at all. But possibly it's tightly connected with the first of all, the technology, native base, native with etc., and the way it looks.
For the native base, I've heard some rumors. I don't have myself experience with it, but I've heard some rumors that it might impact performance, and that you may have to be wary about performance there. So that's only thing that I could add here in terms of negative sentiment.
But isn't native base and Glustack UI made by the same people? I think they've killed native base, like they abandoned it, not maintaining anymore, or maintaining it in a tiny way. But they've made Glustack UI, like the second version of native base. I think that's the current state of it. So the Glustack UI and native base is by the same people. So they could have made
Geeky Ants.
Yeah. I think so. So they could have just made native base version, I don't know, 4 without using a different name, because that's kind of hard for them to market a new tool that does the same thing. I don't know why they choose to do this.
Well, like I said, I have nothing bad to say about native base because I haven't used it. So sorry for even bringing that up. But it's clear that 2,000 respondents have something bad to say about that library. I think we are about 30 minutes in. I'm not sure how much more we have on our list of interesting topics to touch on. Let's do maybe 2 more, and then we will jump into the next section. So from our list of topics, pick the next one.
I would like to suggest the only new section that was introduced in this survey, debugging and profiling.
Let's go there.
Yeah. This section is like an offspring of the last year discussion and the second to most pain point highlighted in the survey. And it's a little bit of collaboration between us and Meta. And they asked more or less about creating more sophisticated questions, and so that would cover this topic better. And so therefore, this is like the initial version of this section this year. We will see how it goes next year's. But we are trying to figure out what people care about in terms of debugging and profiling, and what are the missing pieces here. Not in general words, we are missing or we are lacking debugging? Because state the obvious, but we want some like precise answers. What are the things that are missing? For example, we were comparing React Native with the web platform when we were asking about the Chrome DevTools panels or features, and that's, I believe, the third chart or so.
Sorry,
Here, that right.
JavaScript debugging features?
A little bit. JavaScript debugging features, Chrome DevTools.
Mhm.
That's the chart that presents what people care about in terms of DevTools available on web platform. What they pay attention to. This question was constructed in a way where we were asking both about React Native and web. What kind of DevTools they are using
Mhm.
in both worlds. And here we clearly see that, yet again, console logs are the king.
if default is good enough, people will
Yes,
just
exactly.
use default, and console log is like good enough for for early debugging, right? For just writing here, I'm here, something like that.
Yeah,
That's
console
great.
logs are awesome until you are using some third-party library for some very crucial part of your application, for example, data fetching, and then you are completely stuck because console logs are not showing what is going on there. And here we've got this network panel that I'm really, really, really curious about. Expo already did awesome work delivering a web experience to their ecosystem, but I'm awaiting more. I personally had like a stability problems with that, but I hope so that the next SDK version that
So
is good.
yeah, if I can do a small digression, in the SDK 50 that they released like 2 weeks ago or something like
Yeah.
that, they introduced the plugins for debugger where you can write your own addition for different libraries, where you can add your own plugins for the debugger. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yet again, I will speak from my experience at the project that I'm involved in right now at the moment in Software Mention. I really miss the opportunity to like observe and see what's stored, what is all the data that is stored on in the async storage, for example. And I did my research and I realized that last week they created a plugin for that. And now I can just plug in this plugin and like go through all my keys, all the data, change it, and see how my app reacts to that. That's awesome. And
Yeah.
I never realized that I'm missing that feature.
But
Well,
Flipper also had
it used to be there for Redux and Mobex, right? For years now. I think Redux was even created with the thought in mind that it should allow time travel. So you should be able to like plug in some, dispatch some actions, like change something in your store on the fly, and then your app would react to that. And here we are, I don't know, like 7 years later, where we can do that for all of the libraries that we use.
That's cool. It's cool.
And yeah, we already also discussed the developer debugging experience at the beginning, where you said, Bartek, that this was the biggest surprise for you, that people were complaining about this, and then people at various positions at various companies listened to the feedback, and here we have all of those like new tools on that list. Let's see how they do in the next year.
Yeah, and speaking about the feedback, I think the opinion section is the must go
Another great
section for
segue.
us.
Let's do that.
Yeah, because as we are speaking about the opinions, and these top three charts are showing the overall React Native is moving into the right direction. Chart is clearly showing us that the community agree with that a little bit more than the last year. The complexity of React Native is dropping a little bit year by year, but it is dropping, which is good. I think that Expo like contributed towards it a lot. About the changing. I don't know whether this chart needs any comment. It's just like a regular Gaussian chart or something.
Yeah.
And next we got the most like
Pain points.
spicy, or I would say hot things about this survey. Pain points just below missing features, and the last one advantages. But pain points are the most, let's say,
Interesting.
yeah,
say.
for me, for sure. And what we get here,
So
debugging.
the debugging
Still a
is
key.
still a pain point.
Before we start analyzing this data more in depth, last year, during the first edition, we for each of these questions created like a free form option. People were typing in the answers.
Yeah.
Because we were never like we never created like a list of problems that we wanted to ask people about. And last year, once we like gathered all this input and data from the community, we got the data. So we got the data so we could create a predefined list. And this year there was like a multi-select option to check what are the most pain points you are experiencing doing React Native programming. And like the amount of answers clearly highlights the difference between these ways of like gathering the data. Last year, the most top answer will gather like 80 up to 90 things, and here we've got like 800.
Yeah, it's easier to click the option than write it down.
Exactly. This year, still the most is the debugging. The companies are taking care of the debugging as we speak. So Expo is building their own solution. Meta is also improving the debugging. They have a whole team working on the debugging. Software Engine, we also have a new tool that's coming probably this year. So yeah, the debugging probably will be taken care of till the next year, I sure hope. But the unmaintained packages, it's still a pain point.
Yeah, and what do you think about that?
I'd like to make a huge shout out to every like package maintainer for their hard work, because everybody needs to understand that creating a React Native package, especially that would write some native API code or feature, is a lot of work. It's like dealing with 3 up to 5 languages simultaneously. Next, publishing this package, dealing with the community by handling the PRs, issues, responding to all of that, and lastly, describing this package nicely via some cleverly constructed documentation.
And don't forget about the old architecture and new architecture thing that we have now.
Yeah,
so it doubles the work again. So
yet another puzzle. Yeah, so huge shout out to everybody doing that. And I'm not like surprised by the fact that we've got the amount of unmaintained packages, I would say, is growing a little bit throughout the last year. And I'm afraid about a couple of them that I am using, because I would like, for example, React Native Maps, I would like this package to flourish again, to bloom again. There is some work going on there, but I believe there could be. Without the proper company support for such initiatives, it's very hard to do it.
React Native Maps was like maintained by Airbnb at some point. And it had company support. I'm not sure who maintains React Native Map right now, but I have my small contribution to that library. I actually this is my contribution to React Native open source. I put up a PR to that library a few years ago. This also like ties nicely with the reliance on third-party modules, right? So we need to rely on third-party modules, and then we have this universe of packages where you have to take into account the quality of the package, the features of the package, and then the status of its is it alive or not? Is it maintained or not? So
I root for Expo modules to make it a bit easier to make native components, like the third-party modules. The dealing with native code as well is a pain point here. So with Expo modules, you build it a bit simpler. but it's not yet very popular a way to build a package. So maybe
Yeah.
that will help. I sure hope.
Sure. Okay, guys. I think I want to touch one last point from the detailed discussion about React Native, the state of React Native survey. And this is, let me look at my notes, resources. Oh, yeah, definitely resources. So, what I want to shout out here is that our community is like really strong, and I do this podcast. I am really glad that I can do this podcast. Thank you, Callstack. But I also listen to React Native Radio from Infinite Red a lot, like almost every week. I'm really glad that Expo does like live stream today on Wednesday 31st about their new SDK. I'm gonna watch that definitely. And I just want to like shout out everyone that voted for our blogs, for our podcast, but that's also like voted for everyone else included in that list. Uh, because like, yeah, this is where we get our information from as well. It's not like I read all of the things. I listen to Jamon on React Native Radio, and then I'm just up to speed on what's going on in React Native world. Um, I watch William videos, and then I'm maybe not up to speed of what's going on in Skia in Reanimated, but at least I'm in awe of what you can do in React Native, right? So please, everyone who reads this survey, go to resources, and if you are not following any of those people, some of those people, if you are not reading some of the blogs, please do. And yes, I want to say again, we are really grateful that I think our blog got much more votes than last year. Thank you so much. Thank you for reading this. And yeah, so that was it from the like walkthrough of the survey itself. And then let's talk for another 5 or 10 minutes about like the process of even building the survey. So I already said that like 2 months ago, you reached out to me if I can give you some feedback about the survey. Like I said, I waited a few days, and then all of the things that I wanted to say were already like pointed out in the GitHub discussion. So next year, if you're listening, you can contribute to React Native Survey. Sorry, I still say it the React Native Survey. This is the state of React Native Survey. I'm really sorry about that.
It's
So
fine.
what do you maybe want to tell us about the origins of this? How do you started this project?
Okay, I will try to make it short. The origins, right? Around 2 years ago, when I shifted from working at Expo on DevTools and packages towards client-side projects, and I got my first project. I've dived in, I've looked it through, and I realized that there are some choices, technological choices there already like chosen, but I wanted to like examine them and see whether these are good or not. And then so I started Googling. I started reading a lot of like text on the internet. I talked with people and realized that the knowledge that could help me make a better decision is there, but it's not like in a single place. It's spread all over. And during that time, I was also taking part or like filling in the State of JS survey. And I realized, okay, why don't we create the similar survey, but for the React Native ecosystem? There is so much to ask about, and the concepts from JS are not always like easily translated into the React Native world. So taking like some knowledge from State of JS, that is good. Please do that. But yet React Native is a little bit more specific. So maybe there is some better things, better knowledge or more accurate options available, but I'm not aware of them. So that was the original idea. Let's create it. So I reached out to Demographics. We asked about using their software. They agreed on. So I created a team at Software Mention. We created the first iteration of questions that were lacking last year. This year it's far more accurate. I believe you were talking last year during the similar podcast where you were
Yeah.
going through the first edition, and you mentioned that, oh, obviously this section is missing this tool and it's so obvious why they didn't include it here.
And we've listened.
We've
and
listened
to all
and
the feedback.
now
Well,
we've got it
this
here.
is also on my list of questions. So I want to first of all like congratulate you on the second year and on the like much better quality of the data. I'm
Mhm.
not talking about the questions. I'm talking about the answers. I'm talking about the pool of people that took the survey. So last year, I saw some bias. This year, like we already discussed, there is some bias as well. But you tried, and I think you succeeded in like minimalizing the impact of the like the section of the public that you include in the survey. So
Yeah, for the
keep
first year,
keep going on with this. Yeah.
for the first edition, state of React Native was complete unknown to people. So only the most like eager or most active community members dived in, did their job, filled in the survey. We get the data. This year, we already have something that the state of React Native is a thing. People care about it, and we know that. And so it's nicely like it's organically growing, and thanks to that we get another new like that the amount of responses grew by 500 or so this
Yeah,
year.
something like that.
Our partner Sebastian Lorber from This Week in React also announced it via his, I believe, the most popular React and React Native related newsletter. So we are growing organically. We are also like trying to advertise it as much as possible, just to limit this, like limit all the biases that could like appear in
Mhm.
it.
Well, and I guess at the end of the day, uh, all of the marketing that you can do, like that we can do from this podcast, that Sebastian can do, is targeted at our bubble anyway. Like
Yeah.
it's targeted at people that wants to read about React Native news, wants to listen about it. It would be really hard to get to those developers who just use React Native as a tool, but are not passionate about it, don't want to learn more
Mhm.
about it. That just they just use it as a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Filling the survey is a huge investment, and thank you everybody who did it again and will do it next year. I'm thank you from the mountain. It's awesome, and I'm really grateful for you all that you did it, and I'm awaiting your support next year too.
Awesome. That's such a good vibe to leave this podcast on. So yeah, let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much, guys. The conclusion. So let's quickly wrap what we discussed in this episode. So I'm here with Kacper and Bartek from Software Mention. They are involved in the State of React Native survey. The State of React Native survey happens every year. Let's hope for the eternity. Um, and the results will be published right before this episode drops. So if you're listening to this episode, you already have the results. Guys, do you know the link that people can type
Oh,
to
just
get to the survey?
navigate to the stateofreactnative.com and the big button will be there. Show me the results.
Okay,
Or
awesome,
something
awesome.
like this.
We're gonna link the results in the episode description as well. So we explained how to read the survey, what are the different options that you can click to get through retention, to interest, through usage, stuff like that. And then we touched on some subjectively interesting ideas for us from this survey. That's all. That was the episode. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys, for joining me. Hope we can do that again next year or maybe sooner. I don't know. Thank everyone for listening and for watching us. Don't forget to subscribe to all of the amazing resources that I pointed out in the last section. And yeah, see you around. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
and
you.
See you again.
See ya.